today's video, I want to address a myth that the anti-vaccine movement continues to use, and that's the idea that certain diseases were going down, were not much of a problem even before vaccines were introduced. And this is one of the techniques of the anti-vaccine movement, to take something that has a small amount of truth in it and then misuse it. So it is true that many infectious diseases were falling because of improvements in hygiene, sanitation, nutrition, ventilation, just general living conditions. And then vaccines were introduced and they fell even more. So they argue that vaccines didn't have much of an impact. While it is true that general improvements in the living conditions did decrease the rates of those infections, they were still occurring. There was maybe less mortality from them, but still morbidity from them, meaning people were getting infected, people were having complications, and people were still dying. And even in those cases where diseases were falling before the introductions of the vaccines, we see even a more precipitous drop once the vaccine was introduced. So for example, measles or chickenpox, those may have been decreasing over time, but the deaths may have been decreasing over time, but they were still occurring, and there were still deaths occurring, and once the vaccines were introduced, they fell even further. So it's not one or the other. They go hand in hand, because they're both part of the human effort to control infectious diseases, which includes sanitation and nutrition and hygiene and vaccination. So it's not as if vaccination was superfluous. Vaccination even gave us greater control. And that's very important, because we want more and more control, because we don't want these infectious diseases to disrupt our lives. Even if it's not a huge burden on society, even if it's a nuisance type of infection, that if we can make it not a nuisance with a safe and effective vaccine, why not? So I think this really speaks to the fact that the anti-vaccine movement really has no concern about these infectious diseases disrupting people's lives. They are just against vaccines to be against vaccines. They don't care about what the individual impact of an infectious disease is on a person's life. They may say if it doesn't kill you, who really cares? But there are many other complications that fall short of death that are still serious that you'd want to avoid, including even having to go to an emergency department for an infectious disease. So hopefully this gives you some idea of one of the techniques the anti-vaccine movement uses.